All right, let's get into it. Today, we're shrinking down and diving into a world that feels like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie, but believe me, it is quickly becoming science fact. We are talking about microrobotics. Machines so small, they operate on the same scale as our own cells. So let's shrink down and take a look.
I mean, just think about it for a second. What if we could send tiny autonomous robots into our bloodstream to hunt down and deliver medicine directly to a tumor? Or release them into a river to break down toxic chemicals right at the source? Well, this isn't some far-off fantasy. This is the core promise of microrobotics, a field that is completely changing the game for how we solve some of the world's biggest problems.
And this chart really lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you've got our current methods, often blunt instruments like drugs that flood your entire body or these giant, slow wastewater plants. But on the right, you have the micro-robot approach. It's targeted, it's precise, it's efficient. It really is the difference between using a fire hose and using a surgeon's scalpel. So what exactly are these tiny machines? Well, in a nutshell, it's actually pretty simple. Microrobots are basically these teeny tiny autonomous devices that are built to do one specific job, whether that's delivering a payload, destroying a pollutant, or maybe even performing a delicate operation inside the body. The real challenge, of course, isn't the what, it's the how. Okay, so that leads us to the biggest question, right? Propulsion. How in the world do you get these microscopic machines to actually move where you want them to go? Well, it turns out the solutions are pretty brilliant. So one of the most popular answers is also one of the coolest: magnetism. Seriously, think of it like an invisible leash. By using carefully controlled magnetic fields outside the body, scientists can literally pull and steer these tiny bots with unbelievable precision, telling them exactly where to turn and what to do. And the whole system is a really neat three-part setup. First, you have the magnets themselves, the actuation system. That's what creates the invisible leash. Second, you've got the tiny magnetic robot. And third, and this part is absolutely key, you need a way to see what's going on, right? That's where something like medical imaging comes in, letting you watch and guide the robot in real time. And here's why that is such a massive deal. This level of control means we could get into parts of the human body that are just off limits right now, places we just can't get to without serious, invasive surgery. As the researchers here point out, this technology could unlock a whole new world of medicine. Okay, magnets are cool, but what if you could ditch the external controls entirely? What if the robot could just power itself? Well, some of them can, using a source of energy we have plenty of: light. So how does this even work? It's pretty wild. Scientists have made tiny bots out of a material called antimony sulfide. When you hit it with UV light, this whole chain reaction kicks off. The light creates an energy difference on the robot's skin, which creates a sort of ion field in the water around it. And because the robot isn't perfectly symmetrical, that field actually pushes it forward. And get this, as a side effect, the process also creates something called reactive oxygen species, or ROS, which are great for breaking down pollutants. Now, a single microrobot is impressive, for sure, but one tiny bot can only do so much. The real magic, the real power, happens when you get them all working together. We're talking about the power of the swarm. Okay, so you have one little robot. It can do a small job. But what happens when you have a whole army of them? Now, you're not just doing a task, you're accomplishing a mission. And that's the key idea here. A swarm isn't just 1 + 1 + 1. It's a massive force multiplier. Their combined strength is way, way bigger than the sum of their parts. They can do things together that would be totally impossible for a robot on its own. So what does that actually look like? Well, swarms can snake their way through really complicated, messy environments. They can team up to move stuff that's way too big for just one of them. And remember those light-powered bots? As a swarm, you can control them in these really cool ways. Shine a light, and they expand out. Turn it off, and they pull back together into a tight group, all while they're busy cleaning up nasty pollutants in the water. Just incredible. All right, this next part is where things start to get really wild. Because some of the most mind-blowing ideas in microrobotics aren't coming from an engineering textbook. They're coming from the best engineer there is: nature itself. We're talking about robots inspired by life, and sometimes even built from it. So let's look at a very real-world problem. For patients with certain lung diseases, airway stents are literally a lifeline. They keep the airway propped open so they can breathe. But there's a huge issue. Those stents get clogged up with mucus. So nature already figured out a solution for this, right? Our lungs are lined with billions of these microscopic little hairs called cilia. And they are always moving, always beating together in this perfect coordinated wave to push all that gunk up and out of our lungs. And here's the genius part. Researchers basically said, hey, let's just copy that. They've created these sheets of tiny robotic cilia that are controlled by magnets. You apply a magnetic field and bam, they start beating just like the real ones, clearing mucus out of a stent. It is biomimicry at its absolute best.
Okay, so copying nature is one thing. That's amazing. But what if we take it a giant leap further? What if we don't just mimic life? What if we actually use it as a building block for our robots?
Check this out. This is literally the birth of a biohybrid robot. It starts on day 0 with just a soft little frame. By day 2, they've grown actual skeletal muscle tissue onto it. A few days later, they add a cluster of motor neurons that are sensitive to light. And this is the craziest part. The neurons actually reach out and connect to the muscle. By day 13, you have a living functional unit. You shine a light on the neurons and the muscle contracts, making the whole thing swim. You've created a tiny living machine.
So when you put all of this incredible research together, where is it all heading? It feels pretty clear we are right on the cusp of a full-blown microscopic revolution.
So let's just recap what we've seen. We've got magnetic bots, perfect for delivering drugs right where they need to go. We've got light-powered swarms that can clean up our environment. And we've got these unbelievable biohybrid swimmers, built with real neurons and muscle, designed to monitor things inside the body. Each one is a totally different approach, with a different power source and a totally game-changing application. And I think the most important thing to take away from all this is that these aren't just cool lab experiments. They are the fundamental building blocks for a future where we can tackle enormous problems with a kind of precision that was just unthinkable until now. And that leaves us with one last fascinating question to think about. As we get better and better at building these robots out of living tissue, using actual muscle and actual neurons, and as we shrink them down to the size of cells, you really have to wonder, at what point does the machine end and life itself begin?